Hello and welcome to the third lecture on the Civil War. And so it's spring of 1863, and what we're looking at here is the town of Vicksburg on the Mississippi, the last holdout on the river. And it's going to fall, and that objective for the North will be achieved. Now, Vicksburg, it overlooks the river, the Mississippi River, and it's got because it's high up, they really have control and command over the river, and so Southerners can cross at this point, and it's the only point on the river now that the South still has control of. Well, Grant, Ulysses S. Grant, he makes the decision not to attack the town because it's very well defended. Instead, he's going to put it under a siege, meaning he's going to sort of surround it. We can see his blue surrounding the town, and he's going to wait for them to surrender. And this is Ulysses S. Grant, or Unconditional Surrender Grant. He'll wait them out, and he hates waiting it out. He gets really antsy and nervous as it goes on, but better than dying. May to July is going to be the siege of Vicksburg. So again, success in the West. What's happening in the East? Well, it's Lincoln being frustrated with the lack of leadership for his Army of the Potomac. He had Burnside. He failed an attack on Lee at Fredericksburg, replaced him with Joseph Hooker, who failed with an attack of Lee at Chancellorsville, and George Meade is then put in, who will remain as commander of the Army of the Potomac until the end of the war, but in fact it'll be U.S. Grant will be actually in a position above him and in command of it. Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, those were high points for Lee, General Lee, and so this superior Army of the Potomac continuing to be frustrated by General Robert E. Lee, who, once again, is going to take the war up into the north. So all of these battles are in the same area here. Manassas or Bull Run, we've had two battles there, Chancellorsville, Fredericksburg. This is trying to get Richmond, not even coming close in these battles. And Lee's going to take it up north again. He's going to march up north and show Northerners what war is about. And the two armies are going to meet at Gettysburg, which is the worst and bloodiest battle in this war. And Lee does lose this battle. He is forced to retreat. We won't go into the details of this battle. It's a lot of people have really nitpicked this battle, but we just need to know sort of the results of from this. Is that Gettysburg ended on July 4th. Vicksburg gave up and surrendered on July 4th. So these are both happening at the same time. So this is a key sort of turning point. They've got control of the Mississippi. Lee, because of the losses he's taking, he's now really incapable in the future of invading. North still can't show that they can invade the South successfully, and Lee's sort of hoping that he can gain still a political victory, that the political enemies of Abraham Lincoln, the Democrats, can come into power with the message of negotiated peace and settlement and an end to this war. So it's not over for Lee, as the North is showing that it is incapable of conquering and controlling the South, and if they can't do that, the South wins, and Lee's preventing this from happening. And we need to keep in mind, with the political situation, that Lincoln is taking a lot of heat for the number of dead that are dying, and you can see just some of them over there of the number of casualties. Now those are both sides on there, and it's not just all dead, but it's really starting to add up. And opposition to the war and the advocates of a negotiated peace are really gaining momentum, and the political lines are really hardening. And it's creating questions of, is this worth it? Is ending slavery worth this cost? Are we being punished by God for the sin of slavery. Is this how we redeem ourselves through these deads? And deep questions being asked. And it's during this time, after Gettysburg, and when winter came, they met to create a graveyard, a cemetery on the battlefield. And it's here that Lincoln delivers maybe his most famous words, the Gettysburg Address. And it was very short. And this is a time when people gave really long-winded speeches. That the story goes is that the guy who was going to take a picture of Lincoln giving the speech, he hadn't even set up his camera yet before Lincoln was finished. But the words ended up being quite prophetic, and we'll read them out. Oh, sorry, I got ahead of myself. We also have the draft riots at this time, just after Gettysburg. This is Manhattan, and it's showing all the locations where there was attacks on orphanages for African Americans, on hotels, on other places, and really ugly. Went for days and days. If you were a black man, you wanted to be off the streets because this is what was happening to any that were sort of caught. And this was Irish Americans expressing their rage at having to fight to free slaves. To them, they're strongly opposed. And the only way that they could put this down is through really strong military force to end these riots and the violence that was largely inflicted on African Americans within New York City. And there were riots in other places, and they're really angry that they are being drafted. They can't get out of it because of their poverty, but the rich can. And so, the violence was directed at the rich and at African Americans. But Lincoln, he's going to try to remind people why they're fighting, and that is the goal of his speech. And as he said, a score is 20 years, 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We've come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that this nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. And with a renewed determination, there's the one known picture of him here. From this, he's going to have a renewed dedication. Shortly after, he puts forward his plan for peace when the war is over. That's known as the 10% plan, an extremely lenient plan. He says, when this war is over, we're not going to punish you down in the South. We won't. We're going to protect your property, but slaves are gone. And this is a wartime measure, not necessarily a firm policy, because he's showing the North or the South, if you surrender, we will not punish you. But he's also sort of saying, we're going to bring it to you stronger. We're going to rededicate. We've reaffirmed that we are going to win this war. And it's over the winter from 63 to 64. We have new leadership. Grant is promoted to lieutenant general, which is the rank that that George Washington had. He's the only other person who's ever had this. This is above general. You're the super general, so to speak, in charge of the entire army. And William Tecumseh Sherman is his right-hand man, and they're going to sit down over the winter and come up with a strategy to bring this war to an end. Now, as we go into 63 and 64, keep this in mind. It's an election year. The election's in November. These two need to deliver, and they need to be able to bring it to Lee, show that they can defeat him, that they can defeat the South militarily. Because if they can't do that, there's a very good chance, a very, very good chance, that Lincoln will be defeated in the November elections. And what that will mean is a negotiated peace, probably one predicated on that slavery continues. So we're going to end it there. Thank you very much.